Hey guys! Tonight we pull back the heavy velvet curtain on one of history's most misunderstood professions, stepping into the mud-caked boots of the person everyone needed but nobody wanted to know, the executioner. Imagine a career where your office is a wooden scaffold, your tools are razor-sharp heirlooms, and your clients, well, let's just say they never come back to leave a Yelp review. You probably wouldn't survive the crushing social anxiety of this job for 5 minutes, let alone the actual axe-swinging part. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're drifting off from tonight and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are sitting at a rough oak table that has seen better centuries. The wood is scarred and stained, much like the reputation of the family gathered around it. The air in the room feels thick, smelling faintly of stale ale, boiled cabbage, and something metallic, like the scent of old iron left out in the rain. It's the smell of your father's work. You are 10 years old, maybe 11, and you are just beginning to understand that your life's trajectory was decided long before you were even a glint in your parents' eyes. In the modern world, we obsess over career counseling, personality tests, and finding our passion, browsing job listings like we're shopping for a new personality. But here, in the dim, flickering candlelight of the 15th century, your career counseling session is incredibly brief. It consists of looking at your father and then looking at the sword hanging on the wall. That's it. That is your entire LinkedIn profile. You see, being an executioner isn't a job you apply for. You don't draft a resume highlighting your attention to detail and ability to work under pressure. In the Middle Ages, this role is almost exclusively hereditary. You are born into it, wrapped in the swaddling clothes of infamy the moment you take your first breath. It's less like a job offer and more like a very aggressive, non-refundable subscription service that you can never cancel. If your father is the town's scharfrichter, the executioner, then you are the scharfrichter in training. There is no opting out to become a baker or a cobbler. Those guilds wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, quite literally. The bakers verify their lineage to ensure purity. You have a lineage that ensures exclusion. It's a strange realization to have as a child. You look at your hands, small and currently covered in breadcrumbs, and realize they are already destined to hold the rope, the brand, and the blade. It's a heavy psychological weight, like wearing a wool coat soaked in water, dragging you down while everyone else seems to be floating by on the surface of normal society. You watch your father across the table. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks tired. He's rubbing a sore spot on his shoulder, complaining about the draft coming in from the window. He's just a guy. But to everyone outside these walls, he is the physical embodiment of the state's wrath, a necessary evil that must be kept at a safe distance. This hereditary lock-in is a fascinating and grim piece of legal tradition. In many parts of Europe, particularly France and Germany, the office of the executioner is legally bound to the bloodline. If a master executioner dies and leaves behind a son, that son must take up the mantle. If he refuses, well, the consequences are murky, but generally it means total destitution and exile. You'd be a pariah without a paycheck, which is a terrible economic strategy. Historians still argue whether this strict hereditary system was enforced by the authorities to ensure someone would actually do this grisly work, or if it was actually a protective measure created by the executioner families themselves to maintain a monopoly on the high fees they charged. It's the classic debate. Were they trapped by the system, or were they the ones holding the key? It's likely a bit of both, a golden cage where the bars are made of social stigma and the floor is paved with guaranteed income. So you sit there, chewing on a piece of tough rye bread, accepting your fate. You aren't dreaming of becoming a knight or a merchant. You are simply waiting for your turn. It creates a peculiar atmosphere in the home. There's a quiet solidarity, a sense of us against the world that feels closer to a mafia family in a Scorsese movie than a medieval household. You know that the only people who will ever truly understand you are sitting right here in this room. The house itself feels different from the others in town. It's usually larger, oddly enough. Executioners are paid well, better than the farmers, certainly better than the soldiers, but the house is always situated in a specific, lonely spot. We'll get to the geography of your isolation later, but even inside, the air feels separate. You have nice things, perhaps a fine tapestry or a silver goblet, bought with money that the local priest considers blood money. It's a confusing dichotomy for a young mind. You are wealthy enough to buy the best goose for dinner, but the goose merchant throws the bird at you to avoid touching your hand. You start to notice the way your father prepares for his day. It's not with the manic energy of a warrior going to battle. It's with the slow, methodical plodding of a janitor getting ready to clean a particularly messy spill. He checks his tools with a calm detachment. He sharpens the blade not with malice, but with the same practical focus a barber uses on a razor. Dull blades cause accidents, and accidents cause riots. You watch him, absorbing the lesson. This is not about cruelty. It is about competence. You are learning the trade through osmosis. There's a quirky tidbit about this inheritance that often gets overlooked. In some regions, if an executioner died without a son, the duty could fall to his son-in-law. This turned the executioner's daughters into very specific kinds of political pawns within this dark underworld. Marrying an executioner's daughter was the only way for an outsider to enter the trade, though why anyone would volunteer to jump onto this sinking ship of social standing is a mystery. Perhaps they just really liked the job security. After all, crime is the one industry that never suffers a recession. As the morning light filters through the thick glass that you can afford because your father severed a hand last week, you realize that your identity is fixed. In the modern world, we talk about imposter syndrome, that feeling that you don't belong in your job. You have the opposite problem. You belong too much. You are biologically and legally engineered for this role. The town records list you as executioner's son, as if that is your species rather than your relation. You finish your breakfast, wiping the crumbs from your mouth. The day is starting. You can hear the church bells ringing in the distance, bells that mark a service you are often forbidden from attending in the normal way. Your father stands up, his joints popping, and looks at you. He doesn't say, "Have a great day at school." He nods, a silent acknowledgement that today you might help him polish the tools. You might learn the proper way to tie a knot that doesn't slip. The weight of the future settles on your shoulders, invisible but crushing. You are walking a path that was paved the moment your father took his first swing, a generational relay race where the baton is a heavy, double-edged sword. You didn't ask for this, but the script was written for you, and in the Middle Ages, nobody goes off script. You step out the front door, the heavy oak swinging shut behind you with a thud that feels final, like a judge's gavel. The air outside is different here. You take a deep breath, and your nose is immediately assaulted by a cocktail of scents that no modern candle company would ever dare to replicate. You live in the medieval equivalent of the industrial district, usually situated deliberately downwind from the city center. Urban planning in the Middle Ages was surprisingly sophisticated when it came to the concept of keep the smelly things over there. And unfortunately, over there is exactly where you live. Your house is located just outside the city walls, or sometimes wedged uncomfortably into the city ditch itself. If the city were a high school cafeteria, the nobility are at the cool table near the window. The merchants are trading snacks in the middle, and you are eating a sandwich alone by the dumpster behind the gym. You look up at the towering stone wall that separates your property from the respectable citizens. It casts a long, cold shadow over your garden in the morning, a constant looming reminder of the barrier between us and them. It's less of a defensive fortification and more of a do not disturb sign hung on a massive civic scale. This location isn't accidental, it's statutory. In many European cities, the executioner was required by law to reside outside the town gates. You are geographically marginalized. It's a bit like modern zoning laws, but instead of separating residential areas from commercial ones, they are separating people with souls from that guy who touches dead bodies. You share this delightful real estate with other pariahs of the era. The tanners who use vats of stale urine to cure leather, the knackers who process dead horses, and perhaps a leper colony further down the road. It is a neighborhood of the unwanted, a gated community where the gate is locked from the outside to keep you in. You trudge through the mud of your yard. It's thick and clingy, coating your boots in a heavy gray paste. The silence here is heavy. Inside the city walls, you can hear the faint hum of commerce, carts rattling on cobblestones, hawkers shouting prices, the low murmur of gossip. Out here, it's just the wind whistling through the cracks in the stone and the occasional croak of a raven. Ravens are practically your pets. They hang around your house with the expectancy of stray cats, knowing that your line of work occasionally provides scraps. It's a grim symbiosis that you've just accepted as part of the domestic landscape. Despite the location, your house itself is a confusing paradox. As you turn back to look at it, you realize it's actually quite nice. Because your father earns a significant income, fees for executions, torture sessions, and corpse disposal add up. The structure is solid. It has a slate roof, not thatch. The timber frame is sturdy oak. In a strictly architectural sense, you are living in an upper middle class dwelling, but it's dropped into the middle of a swamp of social stigma. It's like finding a luxury villa in the middle of a landfill. Real estate agents would struggle to write the listing for this one. Spacious 3-bedroom, robust foundation, quiet neighbors, mostly because they are ostracized, stunning views of the city's drainage ditch. Historians still argue whether this forced isolation was primarily for the town's spiritual protection or the executioner's physical safety. On one hand, you are considered infamous, a legal term meaning you have no honor. Your mere presence is seen as polluting. If you walk into a tavern inside the walls, the silence spreads like a shockwave. People worry that your bad juju is contagious, like a spiritual flu. So keeping you outside the walls protects the town's metaphysical hygiene. On the other hand, people generally hate the guy who kills their friends and relatives. Lynch mobs were a very real occupational hazard. Those thick city walls might keep you out, but they also act as a buffer, giving the town guard a few minutes to intervene if an angry crowd decides to storm your house with torches and pitchforks. It's a toss-up. Are you in quarantine or are you in a bunker? You walk to the edge of your property where the sanctuary ends and the public road begins. There is often a physical marker, a stone, a cross, or a small stream that designates the boundary of your isolation. Crossing it feels significant, like stepping out of an airlock. You watch a farmer approaching on a cart. He sees you standing there, leaning on your fence. Immediately, his body language changes. He averts his eyes, staring intensely at his mule's ears, and urges the animal to walk faster. He practically holds his breath as he passes, as if inhaling the air around you might give him a toothache or bad luck with his harvest. You give a small, dry wave. He pretends not to see it. This is your morning social interaction. The area around your home is often referred to as the shambles or the knacker's yard. The smell of rendering fat and old blood is a permanent backdrop to your life, a sensory wallpaper that you can never peel off. Modern people complain about the smell of their coworkers' microwaved fish. You are living in an olfactory environment that would make a vulture gag. Yet human adaptability is a strange thing. You don't really smell it anymore. It just smells like Tuesday. It smells like home. You notice a small garden patch near the side of the house. Your mother or perhaps your wife tends to it, but you aren't growing prize-winning roses here. The executioner's garden is often stocked with very specific plants: mandrake, henbane, belladonna. Herbs used for sedatives, for easing the pain of torture victims, if you're feeling merciful, or for treating the various ailments of the local poor who are too ashamed to see a real doctor. The soil here, fertilized by the grim byproducts of your trade, grows things deep and green. It's another reminder that life continues, even in the shadow of the scaffold. Standing there, looking at the formidable masonry of the city wall, you feel a profound sense of otherness. That wall is a masterpiece of engineering, designed to withstand sieges and battering rams. But its most effective function is psychological. It tells you, every single day, that you are necessary but unwelcome. You are the kidney of the city, filtering out the toxins and waste so the rest of the organism can survive. But nobody wants to look at a kidney. They just want it to work silently in the dark, hidden away behind layers of tissue. You kick a loose stone into the ditch. It makes a wet plop. The sun is rising higher now, illuminating the tops of the church spires inside the city. They glow with gold and promise. Down here in the shadow, the mud stays wet a little longer. You check your belt, ensuring your knife is secure, and prepare to start your chores. You have nowhere else to go, and even if you did, so you wouldn't be let in. The world outside your gate is a hostile ocean, and your house is a lonely island that nobody wants to visit. You turn away from the city walls and retreat back into the relative safety of your home. The heavy door shuts out the judgmental glare of the morning sun, and you find yourself in the dim, warm sanctuary of the kitchen. It's breakfast time. In any other house, this might be a chaotic scene. Children shouting, dogs barking, someone complaining about the porridge being too lumpy. But here, the atmosphere is hushed, almost reverent. It's the sound of silence at breakfast, a quiet that isn't peaceful so much as it is careful. Your family gathers around the long wooden table. Your wife, perhaps the daughter of a neighboring executioner from the next province, sets down a platter of cheese and dark bread. She moves efficiently, her eyes scanning the room with a practiced vigilance. She knows the drill. In this house, calm is a currency you hoard because you never know when the storm outside will break. You sit down, the wood of the bench groaning under you. Your children are already seated. They don't fight over the last piece of bread. They eat with a seriousness that seems too old for their small faces. They've already learned that drawing attention to themselves, even inside their own home, feels dangerous. The meal itself is hearty. As we mentioned, your father's dirty money buys excellent calories, while the peasant down the road is boiling turnip scraps and praying for a protein miracle. You are slicing into a thick wedge of cured ham. But the food tastes different when you eat it in isolation. It's a bit like eating a gourmet meal in a bunker while a war rages outside. The luxury is there, but the enjoyment is dampened by the context. You chew slowly, savoring the salt and fat, knowing that this might be the best part of your day. Conversation is sparse. You don't ask, "What's on the agenda for today, dear?" because you already know. The agenda is death, or pain, or the cleanup of both. Instead, you talk about safe, small things. The roof needs patching. The chickens are laying well. It looks like rain. These mundane observations are life rafts in a sea of grim reality. You cling to them. You discuss the weather with the intensity of a meteorologist, because talking about the weather means you aren't talking about the dungeon. There is a powerful, unspoken bond here. Social psychologists call this siege mentality. When the entire world is against you, the people in your immediate circle become your entire universe. You look at your son across the table. He's gripping his spoon tightly. You know he was jeered at yesterday when he tried to skip stones at the river. You don't bring it up. You just push the butter dish toward him, a silent offering of comfort. In this kitchen, love is expressed through protection and silence. You are a fortress, and your family are the inhabitants you must defend. Occasionally, the silence is broken by a knock at the door. Everyone freezes. Spoons stop midway to mouths. In a normal house, a knock means a neighbor, a delivery, maybe a lost traveler. Here, a knock usually means official business. A messenger from the town council with a warrant. A guard summoning you for a task. Or in the worst cases, an angry local who blames you for their relative's fate. The tension in the room spikes instantly. You exchange a glance with your wife. A quick, microscopic communication that says, "Stay put, I'll handle it." You stand up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, shattering the quiet. It's a sound that makes your children flinch. If it's just the wind rattling the latch, the collective exhale is audible. The tension drains away, but it leaves a residue. You sit back down, but your appetite has dimmed. This is the background radiation of your domestic life, a state of perpetual, low-level alert. You are like a soldier on leave who never quite takes off his armor. There's a strange historical quirk about the executioner's table. In some regions, it was custom that the executioner had the right to havoc in the marketplace. Essentially, the right to take a certain amount of goods for free as a tax. He could walk through the market and scoop a ladle of grain from a sack or cut a slice of meat from a hanging carcass. It sounds like a perk, right? Free groceries. But imagine the social dynamic. You aren't a customer. You are a tax collector of the most hated kind. You bring this food home, and while it fills your belly, it carries the weight of the glare the merchant gave you when you took it. It's resentment stew, and you eat it every day. You finish your meal and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. The coffee, or rather the weak ale or herbal brew that passes for a morning pick-me-up, is finished. The quiet of the breakfast table begins to dissolve as the day's duties encroach. Your wife starts clearing the wooden trenchers. The clatter of wood on wood signals the end of the sanctuary time. The children slip away to their chores in the yard, avoiding the front gate. You remain at the table for a moment longer, staring into the dregs of your cup. In this stillness, you feel the profound loneliness of your station. It's not that you are alone. You have your family, but you are collectively alone. You are a tiny island of warmth in a cold ocean. The intimacy you share with your family is fierce and desperate, forged in the fires of exclusion. You love them harder because the world hates them. Historians sometimes debate the emotional inner lives of these families. Were they miserable, or did they find a strange freedom in their exile, freed from the need to impress the neighbors or keep up with social climbing? Perhaps they developed a more authentic, albeit darker, way of living. You don't have to worry about what the Smiths think of your new tunic, because the Smiths think you're going to hell anyway. It's a liberating kind of nihilism. You stand up, pushing the heavy table back into place. The morning ritual is over. The silence of breakfast was your armor, your preparation. Now you must step out of the kitchen and into the role that society has scripted for you. The executioner doesn't get to have a lazy Sunday morning. The executioner has work to do. You nod to your wife one last time, a silent promise to return, and head toward the door where your tools are waiting. The day has officially begun. You leave the relative safety of your isolated property and head towards the town gates. This is a journey you make only when necessary, and today you need bread. Not the hard tack you survive on during lean weeks, but a fresh loaf from the market. As you approach the city gate, you instinctively check your attire. In many medieval towns, the law requires you to be a walking billboard for your own exclusion. Maybe you have to wear a specific coat of varied colors. Yellow and red are popular choices for danger, or perhaps a hood that marks you out. In some places, you might even have to wear a bell, like a leper or a very gothic cow, ringing a little ding-ding-ding to warn decent folk that the Grim Reaper's janitor is coming through. You pass the guards at the gate. These men know you. You work with them technically. You are the end of the supply chain they start. But they don't nod or chat about the game last night. They stiffen, looking past you, their pikes held just a little tighter. You are the personification of the punishment they threaten pickpockets with. To be friendly with you feels like tempting fate. You slide through the archway, the stone damp and cool, and emerge into the cacophony of the marketplace. The medieval market is a sensory overload. It's loud, colorful, and smells of unwashed bodies, roasting meat, and manure. It's the Amazon.com of the 1400s, but with more mud and shouting. As you step into the flow of traffic, a strange phenomenon occurs. It's the Moses effect. Without you saying a word or pushing a shoulder, the crowd parts. Mothers yank their children back by the collar. Men mid-conversation suddenly find something very interesting to look at on the ground. A bubble of empty space forms around you, a 3-foot radius of social distancing that predates pandemics by centuries. It's a lonely superpower, walking through a crush of humanity without ever brushing a sleeve. You approach the baker's stall. The smell is divine, yeast and wood smoke, a warm golden scent that cuts through the city's stench. The baker is a jovial man, flour dusting his eyebrows, laughing with a customer. Then he sees you. The laughter cuts off like a radio unplugged from the wall. His smile vanishes, replaced by a mask of professional neutrality. He doesn't hate you. He knows you have coins, and coins are coins, but he fears the social contamination you bring. You point to a loaf, careful not to touch it. That one, you murmur. Your voice sounds too loud in the sudden quiet of the stall. The baker nods, using a paddle to slide the loaf onto the counter, keeping it well away from where your hand might have hovered. Now comes the awkward part, the payment. In the modern world, we love contactless payment. We tap our phones or cards to avoid germs. The medieval world invented this concept, but strictly for you. You reach into your pouch and pull out a few silver coins. They are good coins, minted by the same king everyone else serves. But to the baker, they are radioactive. They are blood money earned from the suffering of others. He doesn't hold out his hand. Instead, he points to a small wooden bowl filled with vinegar or water sitting on the counter. Or perhaps he picks up a pair of long iron tongs, usually used for coal. You drop the coins into the bowl or onto the table, and he deftly snatches them up with the tongs, dropping them into a separate jar. He won't mix your money with the clean money of the other customers until it has been washed or symbolically purified. It's a humiliating piece of theater. You are standing there, a paying customer, being treated like you're trying to pay with plague rats. This ritual of the invisible barrier is one of the most persistent aspects of your public life. Historians debate the economic impact of this stigma. Some argue that because executioners had such a hard time spending their money, they ended up accumulating significant wealth simply because they couldn't participate in the impulse buying economy of the time. You can't waste money on drinks at the tavern if the tavern keeper won't serve you. It's a forced savings plan with a terrible user experience. Others point out that this isolation forced executioner families to create their own parallel economies, trading amongst themselves across regions, creating a hidden network of wealth that operated completely outside the guild system. You take the bread, wrapping it quickly in your own cloth to avoid contaminating the counter. You turn to leave, and the bubble of silence moves with you. You catch snippets of whispers. That's him. Don't look. Bad omen. It's like being a celebrity, but exclusively for terrible reasons. You are famous, but you have zero fans. Occasionally, a brave or desperate soul might approach you. Maybe a woman with a sick child who believes in the superstition that a piece of the executioner's rope or a touch of his hand can cure illness. It's a bizarre flip side to the revulsion. You are so steeped in death that people think you hold the keys to life. She might thrust a coin at you, asking for a cure. You look at her tired. You aren't a wizard. You're a guy who knows how to swing a sword and clean a cesspit. But you might give her a nod or a small token, playing the part because it's the only positive interaction you'll have all week. As you navigate the stalls, you see things you might want: a new belt, some spices, a toy for your child. But the exhaustion of the transaction stops you. Is it worth the tongs? Is it worth the silence? Usually, the answer is no. You stick to the essentials. This shopping trip isn't retail therapy. It's a tactical supply run behind enemy lines. You pass a group of merchants discussing trade routes and taxes. They represent the legitimate economy. They have guilds, protections, social standing. You have none of that. You are a freelancer in the most extreme sense. You realize that your entire existence is a paradox. The city cannot function without you. Justice must be served. Waste must be removed. Yet the city cannot stomach your presence. You are the plumber of the judicial system, dealing with the backup that no one else wants to see, and they hate you for the smell on your boots. Heading back towards the gate, the relief starts to set in. The performance is almost over. You clutch the bread to your chest. It's still warm. At least the yeast doesn't judge you. At least the heat of the oven doesn't care about your lineage. You step back through the archway, leaving the noise of the market behind. The guards ignore you again on the way out. You walk back towards the silence of your own home, the heavy loaf a small victory in a world designed to make you feel small. You survived the market. You bought the bread, and you didn't touch a single soul. In your line of work, that's a successful morning. The church bell rings, a deep, resonant booming that vibrates through the soles of your boots. It's a sound that governs the rhythm of medieval life, telling people when to wake, when to pray, and when to rest. For everyone else, it's an invitation. For you, it's a reminder of a closed door. You are walking back from the market, bread tucked under your arm, and you see the townsfolk streaming towards the cathedral. They are dressed in their Sunday best, chatting, holding hands. It's a community event, the social glue of the era, and you are uninvited. Spiritual exile is a tricky concept to wrap your head around. In a world where religion isn't just a belief system, but the actual fabric of reality, where hell is a physical place and salvation is the only goal, being cut off from the church is terrifying. It's not just about missing a weekly sermon. It's about the safety of your immortal soul. You are the necessary sinner. The church sanctions your work. The laws you enforce are often based on religious morality. Thou shalt not kill has a silent asterisk that says, unless the judge says so, then you, Mr. Executioner, go ahead. You are doing God's dirty work, yet you are treated like you're on the devil's payroll. You approach the church, but you don't go to the main doors. Those heavy, ornately carved portals are for the honorable people. If you tried to walk through them, the scandal would be instantaneous. Instead, if you are allowed in at all, you have to use a side entrance, a small, unobtrusive door often reserved for lepers or the destitute. You slip in quietly, avoiding eye contact. You don't get to sit in the pews near the front. You don't get a reserved spot with your name on it. You stand in the back, in the shadows, often behind a pillar or separated by a screen. You are in the room, but you are not of the room. In some towns, the exclusion is even more explicit. You might be completely forbidden from entering the church during regular service. You have to wait until everyone else has left before the priest will hurriedly mumble a blessing over you, or you might have to receive communion through a literal hole in the wall. It's spiritual takeout. Imagine believing that the Eucharist is the literal body of Christ, the medicine for your soul, and having to receive it like a suspicious package through a slot because the priest doesn't want to breathe your air. It's a level of rejection that cuts deeper than any insult in the marketplace. You stand there in the dim light, smelling the incense and the beeswax candles, scents that are supposed to bring peace, but instead bring a sharp pang of longing. You listen to the choir. The music soars, beautiful and transcendent. For a moment, you can close your eyes and pretend you are just another parishioner, just another soul seeking grace. But then the sermon starts. The priest might talk about justice, about punishment for sins. He might even use your work as a metaphor for divine wrath. You are the prop in his story, the boogeyman he uses to scare the congregation into righteousness. It's a surreal meta-experience, listening to a guy talk about how scary you are. There's a fascinating historical debate about the cursed nature of the executioner. Was this exclusion purely social, or was it theological? Did the church actually believe you were damned? Technically, no. The church recognized the necessity of secular justice. St. Paul and St. Augustine had written about the sword of the magistrate being an instrument of God. But theology in books is different from theology in practice. To the average peasant, and even the average parish priest, blood was polluting. You shed blood, therefore you were polluted. It's a visceral, superstitious logic that overrides complex dogma. You are spiritually sticky. Sometimes, you might try to compensate. Executioners were known to be significant donors to the church, anonymously of course. You might pay for a new stained glass window or a set of candles, hoping that your gold might buy a little favor upstairs, even if it can't buy a handshake downstairs. It's a desperate kind of bribery. You're trying to lobby heaven because earth has already sanctioned you. As the service ends, you have to be the first one out, slipping away before the crowd turns to leave. You can't block the exit. You can't be the person someone bumps into on their way to Sunday lunch. You retreat back into the sunlight, blinking, feeling the separation keenly. You watch families greeting each other, planning their afternoon. You have no part in this. Your Sunday is not for socializing. This spiritual isolation has a profound effect on your psyche. It creates a strange internal landscape. You are forced to develop a private relationship with God, one that bypasses the community. You might have a small shrine in your home, a personal altar where you pray with a fervor that the sleepy merchant in the front pew can't imagine. You know the weight of sin better than anyone. You see the end result of it every day on the scaffold. Your faith becomes dark, personal, and intense. It's stripped of the social performativity of the church. You aren't praying to be seen. You are praying to survive. Back at home, your wife might be reading from a small prayer book. Literacy was surprisingly common in executioner families, partly because you were often the ones burning the heretical books and could snag a few copies, and partly because you had the money and the isolation to learn. You sit with her, and perhaps you read a passage together. It's a DIY church service. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I among them. You hold on to that verse. It's your lifeline. You, your wife, and the God who gave you this terrible job. It's a small congregation, but it's the only one you have. The bells stop ringing. The town returns to its bustle. You are back in your own world. The brief window into the community closed. You place the bread you bought on the table. It's time to change out of your Sunday best, which is just your cleanest tunic, and back into your work clothes. The spiritual break is over. The reality of your station returns. You are the man who sends people to meet their maker, but you are not allowed to meet him in his own house. It's the ultimate irony of your existence. You are the doorman to the afterlife, but you aren't allowed in the lobby. You trade your Sunday tunic for a leather apron, the heavy, reassuring weight of work settling back onto your frame. You step out into the enclosed courtyard behind your house. It's time for practice. In the modern world, professionals have simulators, pilots have flight sims, surgeons have cadaver labs, and golfers have driving ranges. You have a wooden post, a stack of straw, and a pile of large orange pumpkins or gourds that you've grown in that nutrient-rich garden of yours. Welcome to the most high-stakes batting cage in history. To the uninitiated, swinging a sword looks like simple brutality. You just lift the heavy metal thing and let gravity do the work, right? Wrong. If you think that, you'll be dead within a year, not from the job, but from the riots that follow a botched one. You pick up your heading sword, Richtschwert. It's a specific tool, distinct from the weapons soldiers carry into battle. It has no point because you aren't trying to stab through armor. It is a wide, flat bar of steel, razor sharp on both edges, designed solely for chopping. It's less of a weapon and more of a human-sized surgical instrument. It feels heavy in your hands, a dead weight that requires momentum to become alive. You approach the wooden post where a bundle of straw is tied at neck height. You aren't just hacking at it, you are visualizing the vertebrae. You are calculating the angle of entry. The human neck is a surprisingly resilient piece of engineering, protected by dense muscle and bone. To sever it in a single blow, which is the industry standard for a good death, requires a perfect storm of velocity, angle, and follow-through. You take your stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. It's eerily similar to a baseball batter stepping up to the plate, except the ball is a human head and the umpire is a mob of 5,000 drunk peasants. You swing, whoosh. The blade sings through the air. It connects with the straw bundle with a satisfying thwack, slicing clean through. You check the cut. Is it level? Did you hesitate? A jagged cut means suffering for the patient and disaster for you. You reset the straw. You do it again and again. Your shoulders burn. Your forearms scream. But you keep going because muscle memory is the only thing that will save you when the adrenaline dumps into your system on the actual day. This obsession with a single stroke is the defining pressure of your life. In Germany, there was often an unspoken, or sometimes written, 3-strike rule. If an executioner required more than 3 swings to detach the head, the crowd was legally permitted to storm the scaffold and intervene. And by intervene, I mean they would beat the executioner to death. So when you are out here sweating in the afternoon sun, slicing through pumpkins, you are literally practicing for your own survival. You are fighting for the right to go home after work. You move on to the pumpkins. These offer a different kind of resistance, mimicking the density of bone and tissue better than straw. You draw a line of chalk or charcoal around the circumference of the gourd. The goal is to split the line perfectly. This is the precision part of the exam. You focus, breathing out slowly, Strike. The pumpkin falls in two clean halves. The seeds spill out onto the muddy ground, a messy rehearsal for the grim biology you deal with professionally. There is a quirky historical tidbit about this training that borders on the bizarre. To achieve the title of master, an apprentice executioner, often your own son, watching you right now from the doorway, had to perform a masterpiece. In other guilds, a masterpiece is a beautiful shoe or a perfect barrel. In your guild, the masterpiece is a flawless public execution under the scrutiny of the town council and visiting masters. It's the final exam of a long apprenticeship that involves practicing on everything except humans first. There are dark rumors and some historical records suggesting that in certain grim periods, stray dogs or livestock were used for this final stage of practice, a horrific bridge between the pumpkin and the person. But usually, you stick to the vegetables. It's cheaper, and the vegetables don't scream. Historians still argue about the role of alcohol in this training and performance. We often see executioners in movies taking a swig of whiskey before the act to steady their nerves. But many records suggest the opposite. Strict sobriety was enforced. A drunken executioner was a dangerous liability. The cup of mercy was for the prisoner, not for you. You have to be cold stone sober to hit a 3-inch target with a 6-pound sword while people are throwing rotten cabbage at you. So your training is dry. You drink water. You hydrate like an athlete because, in a very twisted way, you are one. You wipe the sweat from your forehead. Your hands are calloused, the skin rough like bark. You inspect the edge of your sword. It must be perfect. You have a grindstone in the corner of the yard, and you spend hours honing that edge. It's a meditative process. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The rhythmic sound is almost hypnotic. You treat this object with more care than you treat yourself. Some executioner swords are inscribed with poetry or moral maxims etched into the steel. When I lift this sword, I wish the sinner eternal life, or I execute justice, not vengeance. These inscriptions are a way of offloading the guilt onto the tool. It's not you killing the man. It's the sword. You're just the motive force. The sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across your practice yard. The pile of decimated pumpkins looks like the aftermath of a Halloween prank gone wrong. You feel a dull ache in your lower back. Occupational hazard. You are a laborer, but your labor is death. You practice the pardon gesture too, the moment before the strike where you ask the condemned for forgiveness. It's part of the choreography. You rehearse the words to the empty air. Forgive me, brother, for I must do my duty. It sounds hollow in the empty yard, spoken to a stump of wood. But you need the words to flow automatically, so you don't choke on them when 1,000 eyes are watching. You put the sword down, cleaning the pumpkin pulp from the steel with an oiled rag. The metal gleams, indifferent to its purpose. You have done your reps. You are ready, or as ready as you can ever be. You look at the city wall again. Inside, people are eating dinner, playing dice, arguing about taxes. They don't have to practice killing vegetables to stay alive. They don't have to visualize vertebrae while they eat their pottage. You feel that distance again, the gulf between your worlds and theirs. You are the shadow that allows their light to exist. You pick up the debris of your practice session, the straw, the pumpkin shells, and toss them into the compost. Even your training creates waste that must be managed. You wash your hands in a bucket of cold water, watching the orange pulp swirl away, and head back inside. The performance is coming, but for today, the rehearsal is closed. You hang up the sword, the tool of your high office, and reach for the tool of your daily reality, a shovel. If movies were accurate, the executioner would spend his days brooding in a dark tower, sharpening blades and looking menacing. In reality, You spend most of your time acting as the city's supreme janitor. You see, executions are actually somewhat rare events. A small town might only have a hanging or a beheading a few times a year. If that were your only income, you'd starve. So the town council, in its infinite pragmatic wisdom, assigns you the other jobs that nobody else on Earth is willing to do. Welcome to the world of night soil and carrion. You are the medieval equivalent of the entire waste management department, but without the truck, the gloves, or the union benefits. You pull on a pair of heavy, waxed leather boots, waders really, because you are about to step into something that isn't mud. One of your primary duties is emptying the cesspits and latrines of the city. This happens at night, earning you and your crew the poetic nickname Nightmen or Gong Farmers. You hitch up your cart, a sturdy, watertight vehicle that smells so potent it could probably wake the dead you buried last week. You rattle into the sleeping city, the wooden wheels echoing on the cobblestones. While the respectable citizens are tucked under their goose-feather duvets, dreaming of angels, you are in their backyards, shoveling out the consequences of their digestion. It is grueling, back-breaking work. You lower yourself into the pits, bucket in hand. The sensory experience is indescribable. It's a wall of ammonia and decay that burns your eyes and coats your throat. You learn to breathe through your mouth, shallow and controlled. You joke with your sons or assistants down there in the dark humor being the only air freshener available. Looks like the mayor had cabbage again, someone mutters, and you chuckle, the sound swallowed by the muck. It's a strange intimacy, knowing the dietary habits of the people who refuse to shake your hand. You know them from the inside out. But your portfolio of grime doesn't stop at human waste. You are also the town's knacker, Abdecker or Schinder in German. This means you are responsible for the disposal of animal carcasses. If a horse dies in the street, a stray dog passes away in an alley, or a pig succumbs to disease, the call goes out to you. Not because you are kind, but because you are the only one legally permitted to touch them. You arrive at the scene of a dead draft horse. The owner stands well back, holding a scented handkerchief to his nose. He looks at you with a mix of gratitude and disgust. You get to work. You don't just drag the animal away. You process it. This is the quirky economic engine of your profession. You see, in many regions, the executioner had a legal monopoly on anything that dies without being slaughtered. The carcass is yours. You strip the hide for leather, sold to tanners who also live in your outcast neighborhood. You boil the fat for axle grease or tallow, and you render the bones for glue. You are essentially running a recycling plant for the macabre. That dead horse isn't just a sanitation problem, it's a paycheck. You haul the remains back to your property, adding another layer of aroma to your home address, and get to processing. It's a messy, bloody business that has nothing to do with justice and everything to do with resource management. Historians often point out that this right to the carcass was frequently more profitable than the execution fees. You might get a few coins for a hanging, but the glue and leather trade provides a steady, recession-proof income stream. You are a wealthy man, but your wealth is literally built on rot. This dual role, executioner and knacker, cements your social status as untouchable. In the medieval mind, death is a contagion. Whether it's a criminal on the gallows or a cow in a ditch, the transition from life to death creates a spiritual pollution. By handling both, you are the ultimate sin eater. You absorb the filth of the city so it can remain clean. It's a noble service, logically speaking. Without you, the city would be buried in plague and waste within a month. You are the kidneys of the civic body. But again, nobody wants to have dinner with a kidney. There is a fascinating scholarly debate about whether executioners resented this scavenger work or protected it fiercely. On one hand, it was humiliating. It rubbed the public's nose in the fact that you were unclean. But on the other hand, we see records of executioners suing people who tried to bury their own dead pets. Hey, you'd argue in court, that dead cat is my property. It suggests a fierce protection of your monopoly. You fought for the right to be the garbage man because the garbage was gold. It's a complex relationship with degradation. You monetize your own stigma. As the sun begins to rise, painting the sky in soft pinks and purples that contrast violently with the gray slurry in your cart, you head back out of the city gates. The job is done. The cesspits are empty. The streets are clear of carcasses. The city wakes up fresh and clean, ready for a new day of commerce and piety, completely ignoring the phantom crew that scrubbed it clean while they slept. You are the unseen janitor, the ghost in the machine of civilization. You arrive back at your yard and begin the washdown. You scrub your skin with rough brushes and strong lye soap, trying to scour away the night. But the smell is stubborn. It lingers in your pores, in your hair. It's the eau d'exécution, a signature scent that announces your arrival before you even step into a room. You accept this. You realize that your identity is tied to the things society discards. They throw away waste, you catch it. They throw away criminals, you catch them too. You walk past the boiling vats where animal fat is rendering. The smell is heavy, greasy. To a modern nose, it's revolting. To you, it smells like financial security. It smells like a dowry for your daughter and a warm cloak for your wife. You check the fires, stir the pots. You are an industrialist of the unwanted. Later in the day, you might have to shift gears back to justice. A messenger might arrive with a warrant. You have to mentally pivot from guy who shovels poop to solemn agent of the king's law. It's a jarring transition. You have to wash your hands again, put on your official robes, and go from being the lowest scavenger to the highest authority of life and death. It's a schizophrenic existence. One moment you are subservient to a dead mule. The next you are commanding a crowd from the scaffold. But in a way, they are the same job. You are simply cleaning up the messes that society makes, whether those messes are biological or moral. You are the grim janitor, and business is always booming. You wipe the grime of the cesspits from your hands and pick up a different bag. This one doesn't smell of decay. It smells of camphor, sharp cloves, and dried sage. It's a sensory pivot that would give anyone else whiplash, but for you, it's just the afternoon shift. You are heading down the damp, spiraling stairs into the city's dungeon. You are about to perform one of the most ironic duties in your job description. You are the dungeon doctor. In the modern world, the Hippocratic Oath is the cornerstone of medicine. First, do no harm. Your version of the oath is slightly different. It's more like, first, fix the harm so we can do more harm later. You see, the judicial system is very particular. They want their public spectacles to go according to plan. A prisoner who dies of an infected wound or a fever in his cell before his execution is a wasted asset. It's a bureaucratic failure. The judge feels cheated, the crowd feels disappointed, and the town council feels like they wasted money on feeding him. So it falls to you to keep the condemned healthy enough to die properly. You enter the cell. It's dark, illuminated only by the torch you carry. The prisoner is huddled in the corner, shivering. He looks at you with terror, expecting the rack or the thumbscrew. Instead, you kneel beside him and open your bag. You pull out a jar of salve and clean bandages. You check his pulse. You feel his forehead. You are the medieval equivalent of a ringside sports physician patching up a boxer so he can go back in for the 12th round to get knocked out. Your knowledge of anatomy is unparalleled. The university-trained physicians in the city, the ones with the fancy robes and Latin degrees, learn about the human body by reading ancient texts written by guys who thought the uterus wandered around the body like a bored cat. You, on the other hand, learn anatomy through reverse engineering. You know exactly how the joints articulate because you've had to dislocate them. You know precisely where the major arteries sit because you've had to avoid them during torture sessions to prevent premature death. You are the ultimate practical surgeon. Your medical degree wasn't printed on parchment, it was written in the screams and silence of the torture chamber. You inspect a prisoner's shoulder. It was pulled out of the socket during yesterday's questioning. With a practiced, almost gentle motion, you manipulate the joint. Pop. It slides back in. The prisoner cries out, then slumps in relief. You hand him a cup of water mixed with a little willow bark for the pain. It's a moment of profound cognitive dissonance. You are his tormentor and his savior wrapped in one leather apron. He hates you, but right now, he needs you. And oddly enough, you might feel a strange professional duty toward him. He is your project. You want him in peak condition for his big day. This medical expertise leads to one of the most fascinating side hustles of the executioner's life. Despite the fact that the townspeople won't touch your hand in the market or sit next to you in church, they will line up at your back door when they have ailments that the real doctors can't fix. Pain is the great equalizer. When a merchant has a crushed foot or a peasant has a mysterious boil, the social stigma evaporates instantly. They know you have the touch. You hold clinic hours in your kitchen. Imagine the scene. The same room where you eat your isolated breakfast is now a waiting room. A blacksmith with a fracture sits on the bench. A mother with a sickly child stands by the hearth. They are terrified of you, but they trust your hands. You set bones with a precision that borders on the miraculous. You brew tonics that actually work. Historians often note that executioners were effectively the orthopedic surgeons of the Middle Ages, while the academic doctors were balancing humors and checking star charts. You were applying traction and reducing fractures. But here's where it gets weird and a little bit fringe. Your pharmacy stocks ingredients that you can't buy at the local apothecary. Because you have exclusive access to the bodies of the condemned, you are the supplier of corpse medicine. This is a real, widespread historical practice. You might sell vials of poor sinner's fat, Armazunderfett or Menschenfett. It was believed to be a cure-all for rheumatism and arthritis. You might sell shavings of a skull for epilepsy. Pieces of the hangman's rope are sold as good luck charms or cures for headaches. It's a gruesome economy. You are literally parting out the people you executed to heal the people who paid for the execution. It's recycling on a level that is both practical and horrifying. You hand a small pot of salve to an old woman with aching knees. She pays you, her hand trembling slightly, not using tongs this time. Desperation bridges the gap. She doesn't ask what's in the jar. She doesn't want to know. She just knows that the hangman's salve takes the pain away. There is a scholarly debate about the mindset of the executioner in this role. Were you truly altruistic, finding a way to atone for your violent duties by healing people? Was this your way of buying your way back into humanity? Or was it purely cynical? Did you see the human body as just a machine? Sometimes you break it for the state. Sometimes you fix it for cash. The truth is likely a messy mix of both. You take pride in a bone set straight, just as you take pride in a head cut clean. It's all about competence. You finish with the prisoner in the dungeon. You apply a poultice to a festering wound on his leg. Keep it dry, you tell him, the advice sounding absurd in the dripping stone cell. He nods, looking at you with that confusing mix of gratitude and fear. You pack up your bag. You have done your job. He will survive the night. He will be healthy enough to walk to the scaffold on Friday. As you climb the stairs back to the surface, leaving the heavy air of the dungeon behind, you reflect on the strange intimacy of your position. You know the citizens of this town more intimately than anyone. You know their sins from the torture chamber, and you know their physical weaknesses from your clinic. You have seen them naked, broken, and vulnerable. They pretend you don't exist when you walk down the street, but in the dark of the night, when the toothache is unbearable or the fever spikes, you are the first name on their lips. You step out into the evening air. The sun is setting, casting long shadows. You check your hands. They smell of medicine now, masking the scent of the grave. You are the healer who kills, the killer who heals. It's a duality that would drive a lesser man insane, but you just shrug. You are a mechanic of the human frame. Sometimes you take it apart. Sometimes you put it back together. The only difference is the work order. The day has arrived. You wake up before dawn, your stomach churning with a familiar cocktail of nausea and adrenaline. It's game day. In the modern world, we get nervous about public speaking, fumbling through a PowerPoint presentation while our boss looks at his watch. You are about to perform a task that requires the precision of a neurosurgeon, but you have to do it on a wooden stage, in front of 5,000 screaming drunk critics who are hoping, just a little bit, that you screw it up. You climb the steps of the scaffold. The wood creaks under your boots, a sound that is amplified by the sudden hush of the crowd. This is the moment where your entire existence is validated or destroyed. You are carrying the Richtschwert, your two-handed sword. You've checked the edge 10 times this morning. It's sharp enough to shave the hair off a gnat's leg. But sharpness isn't the only variable. We need to talk about the sheer technical difficulty of what you are attempting. Movies always show the condemned resting their head on a convenient wooden block, like they're waiting for a massage. That's usually for the axe. The axe is the economy class of executions, brutal, messy, but mechanically simple. You just have to hit a stationary object hard. But the sword? The sword is the VIP package. It's reserved for nobility or high-status criminals, and in the German tradition, there is often no block. The prisoner is kneeling upright. That's right, no support. They have to hold themselves steady, using their own core strength and sheer willpower. Your target is a moving, breathing, terrified human neck, floating in open air about 4 feet off the ground. If they flinch, you miss. If they faint, you miss. If you sneeze, you miss. It is a high-stakes duet where your partner is trying very hard not to die, and you are trying very hard to kill them gracefully. You take your position behind the prisoner. You can smell their fear, a sharp, acrid scent of sweat and urine that cuts through the morning air. You can also smell the crowd. They are a single, throbbing organism, pressing against the cordon of guards. They want a good death. To the medieval spectator, a good execution is a piece of theater. It should be swift, decisive, and ideally instant. If the head flies off in a single stroke, the crowd cheers like their team just won the World Cup. It's a release of tension, a confirmation that justice is clean and divine. But the anxiety gripping your chest is about the alternative, the botch. This is the nightmare that wakes you up in a cold sweat. If your angle is slightly off, the blade hits the shoulder blade or the jaw. It bounces. The sound of steel hitting bone without severing it is a sickening clunk that echoes across the square. The prisoner screams. The blood sprays, but the job isn't done. Now you have to hack. You have to turn a solemn ritual into a butchery. There is a gruesome mainstream historical fact that haunts every executioner. The case of the Countess of Salisbury, or perhaps the Duke of Monmouth, who took 5, 7, or even 10 blows to finish. Imagine the scene. You strike. You fail. The crowd's cheer turns instantly into a low, menacing growl. They stop seeing you as the agent of justice and start seeing you as an incompetent murderer. You panic. You swing again, wilder this time. It becomes a horror show. In Germany and other parts of Europe, there was an unwritten and sometimes written 3-strike rule. If you couldn't sever the head in 3 blows, the legal protection of your office evaporated. The crowd was permitted, even encouraged, to storm the scaffold, and they wouldn't just boo you, they would tear you apart. You would be stoned, beaten, or stabbed to death, right there next to your victim. It's the ultimate performance review. We see you failed to meet your KPIs for this quarter, so we are going to beat you to death with cobblestones. So you stand there, grounding your feet. You try to slow your heart rate. You are waiting for the prisoner to finish their prayers. You are looking for that split second of stillness between breaths. You grip the handle. The leather is tacky with rosin to prevent slipping. You aren't thinking about the morality of capital punishment. You aren't thinking about the king or the law. You are thinking about physics. Velocity equals mass times acceleration. You raise the sword. You don't lift it straight up like a cartoon character. You hold it low, or perhaps rest the tip on the ground, hiding it from the prisoner's peripheral vision to keep them calm. Then, in one fluid motion, you wind up. There is a quirky tidbit of folklore here regarding the executioner's stroke. Some executioners believed in the Capuchin knot, a specific way of tying the hands that supposedly pulled the shoulders down and exposed the neck vertebrae more clearly. Others swore by a sip of herbal courage, though as we discussed, you are stone sober. But the weirdest superstition? Some executioners believed that if the sun reflected off the blade into the prisoner's eyes at the last second, the soul would be trapped in the sword. So you might subtly shift your stance to mind the lighting. You are a lighting director and a killer. Whoosh! The sound of the blade cutting the air is the loudest silence you've ever heard. If you've done your job, if the pumpkins and the straw and the years of ostracization have paid off, you feel almost no resistance. It feels like cutting through water. The head separates. It hits the planks with a wet thud. The body, oddly, stays kneeling for a split second before collapsing. The crowd erupts. Huzzah! It's a roar of approval. You lower the sword. You are breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the release of terror. You check the blade. Ideally, there are no notches. You wipe it clean on a cloth or the prisoner's shirt. You have survived. Historians still debate the role of the bribe in this performance. It was customary for the condemned or their family to pay the executioner a sum of gold before the act. The phrase, "to do your job well," was the polite euphemism. Was this a tip, or was it protection money? Some scholars argue that if the family didn't pay up, the executioner might intentionally botch the job to cause more suffering, sending a message to future clients. Pay the toll, or I bring the dull sword. Others argue that no executioner would risk their own life and reputation just to be petty. The risk of the mob was too high. You likely took the money because you were going to do your best anyway. But hey, gold is gold. You step back from the body. Your assistants, maybe your sons, rush forward to handle the remains. You are the star. You don't do the cleanup while the audience is still watching. You sheathe the sword. You look out at the sea of faces. A moment ago, they were ready to kill you. Now they are looking at you with a mix of awe and fear. You are the master of death. You have channeled the power of the state and the wrath of God through a piece of steel. But you don't smile. You don't wave. You maintain the mask of gravity. Inside, you are just thinking, thank God that's over. I need a drink. You walk down the stairs. your legs feeling like jelly. You have passed the test for another day. You get to go home to your wife and your garden. You get to live. But you know that the next warrant is already being written, and the next crowd will be just as hungry. You are only as good as your last swing. The silence that follows the strike is brief. It hangs in the air for a heartbeat, a fragile bubble of collective shock before it pops. And when it pops, it is replaced by a wall of sound that hits you like a physical wave. You are standing on the scaffold, the bloody sword in your hand, and you are looking out at what looks like a heavy metal festival organized by people who haven't discovered deodorant yet. Managing the crowd is the part of the job description that nobody tells you about. You are nominally a judicial officer, but in this moment, you are a stage manager, a lion tamer, and a bouncer all rolled into one. The execution is not a solemn, private affair conducted in a sterile room. It is the Super Bowl of the medieval calendar. It is a public holiday. Shops close, schools let out. If the town council didn't declare a holiday, people would just skip work anyway. Sorry, boss, can't come in today. They're breaking a highwayman on the wheel, and I've got front row tickets. You look at the sea of faces. There are thousands of them. In a time before cinema, before television, before TikTok, you are the entertainment. You are the content creator, and this is the viral video. But unlike a digital audience that can only leave mean comments, this audience has rocks, rotten vegetables, and very little impulse control. The atmosphere is bizarrely festive. We tend to think of executions as grim, gray events where everyone wears black and weeps. Far from it. This is a carnival. As you scan the crowd, you see vendors weaving through the crush. They are selling sausages, hot meat pies, and jugs of ale. Get your gallows pie. Piping hot. It's a surreal juxtaposition. People munching on snacks while watching a man die. It's the ultimate dinner theater, though the dinner is questionable and the theater is fatal. You have to read the mood of the room instantly. The crowd is a fickle beast. Sometimes they are on your side. If the criminal was a despised murderer or a foreign spy, they cheer for you. They are bloodthirsty, chanting for justice. In these moments, you are a rock star. You can play to the crowd, maybe give a little flourish as you clean the blade. But this adoration is dangerous. It can tempt you to showboat, and showboating leads to mistakes. And as we discussed, mistakes lead to you being the next main attraction. However, sometimes the crowd is on the criminal's side. Maybe it's a local hero, a Robin Hood figure, or a young woman accused of a crime that seems too harsh for the punishment, like stealing bread. In these cases, the air is thick with hostility. You feel thousands of eyes boring into you, hating you. You hear the insults, butcher, hangman, cursed one. You have to stand there, stone-faced, absorbing their hatred. You cannot react. You cannot shout back, "Hey, I didn't sentence him. I'm just the guy with the axe." You are the lightning rod for their anger at the state. There is a fascinating scholarly debate about the psychology of these crowds. Philosophers like Michel Foucault have argued that the spectacle of the scaffold was a way for the state to display its power, to write its laws on the body of the criminal. But other historians argue that for the crowd, it wasn't about law at all. It was about subversion. It was a safety valve. For one day, the peasants could scream, shout, and mock authority. They could watch a nobleman die just like a commoner. It was a moment where the social hierarchy was flattened by the great leveler of death. So are you enforcing the law, or are you just hosting a riot? It's a blurry line. You watch the front row carefully. It's usually packed with the town's enthusiasts, the regulars who never miss a hanging, but there's also the risk of a rescue attempt. If the criminal has friends, the scaffold is the last chance for a jailbreak. You have your assistants, your valets, standing guard, but if the crowd decides to surge, a wooden railing isn't going to stop them. You have to project an aura of absolute, terrifying authority. You have to look like you want them to try something. It's a bluff, of course. Inside, you're just hoping the guards do their job. Then there is the chaos of the miracle. This is a nightmare scenario for you. Let's say you are hanging someone. You push them off the ladder. The rope snaps. The prisoner falls to the ground, bruised but alive. In the modern world, we'd say, equipment failure, get a new rope. In the medieval world, the crowd screams, a miracle. God has saved him. Now you have a massive problem. The crowd believes the prisoner has been exonerated by divine intervention. They want him freed. The magistrate sitting on his fancy chair wants him hanged because the sentence was to be hanged until dead, not to be hanged until the rope breaks. You are stuck in the middle. If you try to string him up again, the crowd might tear the scaffold down and kill you for defying God's will. If you let him go, the magistrate might fine you or imprison you for incompetence. You have to make a split-second decision, usually involving checking how many rocks the front row is holding. There is a quirky fringe element to crowd management involving the souvenir hunters. We touched on the medical value of body parts earlier, but the sheer frenzy of the crowd to get them is something else. As soon as the deed is done, people might rush the scaffold. They want to dip their handkerchiefs in the blood. They want a piece of the rope. They want a splinter of the wood. It's like fans fighting for a drumstick thrown by a drummer, but infinitely more macabre. You have to beat them back. Back, this is official property. You are defending the corpse because technically it belongs to you, or the king, not to the souvenir hunters. You also have to manage the last words. This is the prisoner's final podcast, broadcast live to the nation. Most prisoners are too terrified to speak, or they mumble a standard prayer. But some use this platform. They might claim innocence, inciting the crowd against the judges. They might curse the town. A charismatic criminal can turn the crowd against you with a few well-chosen words. You have to know when to cut them off, literally or figuratively. If a speech goes on too long or gets too inflammatory, you might look at the sheriff, get the nod, and proceed. You are the editor of the final scene. As the body is removed, the energy in the square shifts. The climax is over. The adrenaline crash hits the crowd. They look at the blood, then at their half-eaten meat pies, and suddenly the reality of what they just watched settles in. The shouting dies down to a murmur. People start to drift away, heading back to their workshops and fields. You remain on the scaffold for a moment, watching them leave. It's a strange feeling of abandonment. 10 minutes ago, you were the center of the universe. Now, you are just a guy standing on a bloody platform with a dirty job left to finish. The festival is over, and you are the janitor left to sweep up the confetti. You catch the eye of a child being led away by his father. The kid is looking back at you, eyes wide. Is he traumatized, or is he just entertained? Historians often wonder if these public executions actually worked as a deterrent. Did seeing a pickpocket hang actually stop people from picking pockets? The irony is that executions were the best place to pick pockets because everyone was looking up at the sky. You suspect that you aren't fixing society. You're just part of its dark entertainment cycle. You signal to your assistants, it's time to pack up. The show is closed. You wipe your brow, not with a bloody handkerchief, but with your sleeve. The roar of the crowd is still ringing in your ears, a phantom noise that will follow you home. You stepped onto the stage, you played your part, and you survived the critics. In this business, that's the only standing ovation that matters. The crowd has dispersed, the scaffold is swept, and the adrenaline of the execution has faded into a dull headache. But your work isn't done. While executions are the headline events, The blockbusters of your career, most of your billable hours are spent on the less glamorous, daily grind of judicial maintenance. Welcome to the world of non-lethal punishment. If the beheading is the Super Bowl, this is the Tuesday night minor league game. It's repetitive, it's messy, and it involves a staggering amount of what can only be described as some pain bureaucracy. You walk down to the holding cells, or perhaps back to the public square where the whipping post stands. You are holding a list, yes, an actual checklist provided by the town clerk. In the modern world, we complain about endless meetings and admin work. You have that too, but your admin involves physically marking people. You are about to engage in the medieval equivalent of stamping rejected on a stack of faulty forms, except the forms are people and the stamp is red-hot iron. First up on the docket, branding. This is where the job feels most like a gruesome craft project. The law loves labels. It wants everyone to know exactly what kind of sinner is walking down the street. So you have a collection of irons heating in a brazier. You check them with the detached professionalism of a chef checking a steak. You aren't angry at the thief who stole a silver goblet. You just need to make sure the tea is hot enough to leave a clear impression, but not so hot that it causes gangrene. It's a delicate thermal balance. There is a dark typography to this work. In England, you might brand M for malefactor or V for vagabond. In France, the fleur-de-lis was popular, a beautiful symbol turned into a permanent scar of shame. You have to be careful with your kerning. You press the iron against the fleshy part of the hand or the cheek. The sound is a sharp hiss, like a drop of water hitting a hot pan. The smell, acrid, burning hair and skin, fills your nose. To the prisoner, this is the worst moment of their life. To you, it's item 3 on the agenda. Label the thief. You look at the scribe standing nearby, dipping his quill. He nods. You nod. The transaction is recorded. One branding. Successfully administered. Next, you move to the flogging post. This is pure manual labor. The judge has ordered 40 lashes minus 1, or perhaps a specific number based on the severity of the crime. You take off your heavy outer coat, because this is cardio. You pick up the whip, maybe a cat o' 9 tails, maybe a simple birch rod. The crowd for this is smaller, less excited. It's just a whipping. It's the background noise of the medieval city. Your arm rises and falls in a steady rhythm. Crack. 1, the scribe chants. Crack. 2, you have to maintain a consistent pace. If you go too fast, the strokes are too light, and the crowd jeers you for being soft. If you go too hard, you might accidentally kill the guy, and then you're in trouble for destroying state property. It's a physical challenge. By lash 20, your shoulder is burning. By lash 30, you are just wishing this guy hadn't stolen that pig, so you could be home sitting down. There is a fascinating historical nuance here regarding the Russian knout, or similar heavy whips. In some traditions, the executioner could be paid per stroke. This created a perverse incentive structure. Imagine being paid by the click, but the click is a welt on a human back. However, most town councils were cheap. They paid a flat fee for the session, which meant you wanted to get it over with as efficiently as possible. It's the gig economy at its darkest. Then there is the pillory or the stocks. This is the babysitting portion of your day. You lock a baker who sold underweight loaves, or a scold who talked too much into the wooden frame. Your job here isn't to inflict pain directly. It's to facilitate the crowd's participation. You are the moderator of a real-life comments section. The public is invited to throw rotten vegetables, mud, and dead rats at the offender. Your role is to stand guard and ensure the fun doesn't turn fatal. You are the referee. A soft tomato? Allowed. A sharp rock? foul. You have to step in and say, all right, settle down, let's stick to the soft produce people. It's incredibly boring. You just lean on your staff, watching people throw trash for an hour. You are the chaperone at the world's worst party. Occasionally, you have to perform amputations of justice. This is where the surgeon skills we talked about earlier come in handy. A cut purse might be sentenced to lose an ear or a hand. This is surgery, but without the sterile field or the anesthesia. You have to be quick, chop. Then, immediately, you have to cauterize the wound with a hot iron or dip the stump in boiling pitch to stop the bleeding. It's brutal, gore-soaked work. But again, the focus is on the paperwork. The ear must be produced. It might be nailed to the pillory as a warning. You are creating public service announcements out of cartilage. Historians still debate the primary goal of these punishments. Was it about the pain, or was it about the infamy? Many scholars argue that the physical pain was secondary to the permanent social ruin. A branded face meant you could never hide your past. You, the executioner, were not just inflicting a wound, you were destroying a reputation forever. You were the editor of their biography, crossing out their future with a hot iron. There is a quirky fringe fact about the fees for these services. In many towns, the executioner had a price list that looked disturbingly like a restaurant menu. To boil a hand, 4 shillings. To nail an ear, 2 shillings. To whip a servant, 1 shilling. You would submit an invoice to the town council at the end of the month. Invoice, number 402, services rendered, 3 floggings, 1 ear cropped, 2 brandings. It's bureaucratic surrealism. You are itemizing trauma. As the sun begins to set, the scribe rolls up his parchment. The day's quota of justice has been met. The prisoners are dragged back to their cells or released to stumble home, marked forever. You clean your irons. You wipe down the whip. You wash the blood off your apron for the 3rd time today. This mundane cruelty is, in some ways, harder on the soul than the executions. The executions have a sense of finality, a dramatic arc. This is just processing. It's the factory floor of the judicial system. You are a cog in a machine that grinds people up and spits them out slightly smaller than they were before. You pack your tools. You are tired. You smell of singed hair and sweat. You walk home, jingling the coins in your pocket, your earnings for the day. You bought bread this morning. This afternoon, you earned it by taking an ear. It's a simple, horrific equation. You try not to think about the math as you close the door to your silent house. You are sitting at your heavy oak table again, the same one where you ate your silent breakfast this morning. The house is quiet, the children asleep, the fire dying down to a bed of glowing orange embers. In the flickering light, you open a leather pouch and spill its contents onto the wood. Clink, clatter, thud. It's the sound of success. It's the sound of a good month. To a modern ear, it sounds like loose change, but to a medieval ear, this is the heavy, authoritative percussion of serious wealth. You begin to stack the coins, silver thalers, maybe a few gold guilders, if you had a high-profile client recently. You are, by any objective economic metric, a very successful man. If we looked at your tax returns, if such a thing existed in a standardized form, you would be in a bracket far above the baker, the blacksmith, and even some of the minor gentry who look down their noses at you. You are the medieval equivalent of a tech CEO who runs a platform everyone hates, but everyone uses. You are rolling in it. Let's look at the revenue stream. We talked about the execution fees, the tariff of pain, where every severed ear and flogged back has a price tag. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. You have the income from the night soil business, a monopoly that literally turns waste into gold. You have the knacker's yard selling hides and glue. You have the medical clinic where desperate people pay premium rates for your special salves. And then there are the perks. There is a quirky, almost unbelievable historical fact known as the right of havoc, droit de havage in France. In many European cities, the executioner had the legal right to walk through the marketplace and take a certain portion of goods for free. You could dip a ladle into a sack of grain, take a handful of vegetables, or slice a piece of meat from a hanging carcass. It wasn't theft, it was a tax. Imagine walking into a Whole Foods, grabbing a handful of quinoa and a ribeye steak, and just walking out while the manager glares at you but can't call the police because you are the police's grim cousin. It sounds fantastic, right? Free groceries for life. But pause for a moment and consider the social cost of that free scoop of grain. You aren't a customer, you are a pestilence. When you reach into that sack, the merchant writes off the loss, not as a tax, but as a spoilage. You are a human weevil. You bring this food home, and your family eats well, better than 90% of the town. But every mouthful is seasoned with the knowledge that it was surrendered, not sold. It is the bread of resentment. So you sit there stacking your silver towers. You have the means to buy almost anything you want. You could afford a velvet doublet, the kind the wealthy merchants wear. You could afford a fine horse. You could afford a pew in the front row of the cathedral. But here is the cruel paradox of your existence. You have the purchasing power, but you lack the social license to spend it. If you walked into a tailor's shop and asked for a velvet coat, the tailor might refuse to measure you. He doesn't want to touch you. If he does sell it to you, he'll charge you double, the nuisance fee, and then burn the measuring tape. And even if you get the coat, where are you going to wear it? To the tavern? You aren't allowed in? To the town ball? You're not invited? To the church? You're in the back. You are a man all dressed up with literally nowhere to go. So your wealth turns inward. Your home becomes a hidden palace of comfort. Behind the shuttered windows and the thick walls, you might drink imported wine from a crystal goblet. Your wife might wear fine linen. Your bed might have the softest goose-down mattress in the district. It's a gilded cage in the most literal sense. You create a microcosmos of luxury that only your family sees. It's like being a billionaire in a bunker. You are living the high life, but it's a secret life. This accumulation of cash leads to another mainstream historical reality, the executioner as the town banker. Because you have liquid capital and very few ways to spend it, and because the church forbids usury, lending money with interest, for decent Christians, you often step into the void. You lend money? Who are your clients? Often, the very same merchants and minor nobles who publicly despise you. Imagine the scene. A proud, arrogant merchant who refused to look you in the eye at the market knocks on your door at midnight. He's in debt. He needs a loan to cover a bad shipment. You invite him in. You sit him at the same table. Suddenly the power dynamic flips. He needs your blood money. You slide a stack of coins across the table. He takes it, his hand trembling, trying not to make skin contact. You own him now. He owes you. Historians still argue about whether this economic power softened the stigma or hardened it. Some suggest that money talks, and eventually, wealthy executioner families were able to buy their way into semi-respectability, or at least marry their daughters into desperate merchant families. Others argue that this financial leverage only deepened the hatred. Nobody likes their banker, and nobody likes their executioner. If your banker is your executioner, that's a recipe for profound loathing. You are holding the axe over their neck and the debt over their head. You look at the coins again. One of them is bent. You pick it up. It's a physical reminder of the cursed nature of your wealth. People would often damage the coins they paid you with, bending them or marking them, so they wouldn't accidentally get them back in change later. It's a superstitious marking system. This coin has touched the hangman. Take it out of circulation. You rub your thumb over the bent silver. It spends just the same as a straight one. You think about your children. You are saving this money for them. But what can it buy them? It can't buy your son an apprenticeship in a respectable guild. The carpenters won't take him. The weavers won't take him. He is destined to inherit your sword and your shovel. The money can make his life comfortable, but it cannot make it different. It's an endowment for a hereditary prison. And for your daughters? The dowry you can provide is massive. In a normal world, a large dowry would attract suitors from miles around. But in your world, that pot of gold comes with a hazardous materials warning. No matter how much you offer, a respectable farmer won't marry her. The stigma is thicker than the gold is heavy. We'll get to where she finds love in a moment, but for now, you realize that your wealth is impotent in the marriage market of the wider world. You sweep the coins back into the pouch. The heavy thwump of the bag hitting the table is satisfying, yet hollow. You are the king of the outcasts. You have mastered the game of survival in a system designed to crush you. You have turned shit and death into silver and gold. It's an alchemical triumph. But as you look around your comfortable, well-stocked, lonely kitchen, you realize the one thing you can't afford is a way out. You stand up and hide the pouch in a loose floorboard or a locked chest. There are no banks for people like you. You are your own vault. You blow out the candle, plunging the room into darkness. The warmth of the house is real. The fullness of your belly is real. But as you walk to your bedroom, the silence of the house feels less like peace and more like the quiet of a vault. You are rich, yes. But in the Middle Ages, poverty is a social state, not just a financial one. And by that measure, you are the poorest man in town. You are sitting by the hearth, watching the firelight dance on the face of your eldest daughter. She is 16, perhaps 17. In the eyes of the medieval world, she is in the prime of her life, a flower ready to be plucked. She is beautiful, healthy, and thanks to your grim industry, she is wearing a dress of imported blue wool that a merchant's wife would kill for, figuratively speaking, of course. You do the literal killing around here. She is also sitting on a metaphorical chest of gold, a dowry so substantial it could buy a small farm and a herd of cattle. By all logic, there should be a line of suitors winding out your door and down the muddy road, men fighting each other for the chance to bow to you. But the road is empty, the door is bolted, and you know, with a heavy heart, that no local boy will ever come knocking. This is the heartbreak of the executioner's fatherhood. You can give your children everything: food, warmth, education, wealth, except the one thing that matters most in a community-based society: a way out. Your infamy is a genetic condition. It flows through the bloodline like a dormant virus. Your daughter hasn't hurt a fly. She probably spends her days sewing or tending the herb garden. But to the baker's son or the blacksmith's apprentice, she is the hangman's girl. Touching her is touching death. Marrying her would mean social suicide. He would lose his guild membership, his friends, and his standing in the church. No amount of gold can bridge that gap, so you have to become a matchmaker. But you aren't browsing the local singles scene. You are operating an international dating network that would rival the royal families of Europe for its exclusivity and inbreeding. Welcome to the Executioner's Matchmaking Service, the most restricted social network in history. You pull out a piece of parchment and a quill. You are writing a letter. You aren't writing to a friend. You are writing to a colleague. Maybe it's the executioner in the next major city, 50 miles away. Maybe it's a contact 3 provinces over. You know him. You met him once at a regional gathering, or you know him by reputation. You know he has a son who is coming of age. Dear Master Schmidt, you write, as dipping the quill in ink. I trust the harvest of justice has been bountiful in your region. My daughter, Gretchen, is of marriageable age. She is pious, strong, and can dress a wound better than any barber surgeon. My dowry offer is 500 guilders. It's a business transaction, plain and simple. You are proposing a merger. In the corporate world, companies merge to consolidate market share. In your world, families merge to consolidate survival. This practice of endogamy, marrying only within a specific social group, created massive, sprawling executioner dynasties that dominated the trade for centuries. You might recognize some of the famous names if you dig into the history books. The Sanson family in France is the Kardashians of the execution world. They held the office of Monsieur de Paris for over 200 years, passing the axe from father to son like a baton, eventually executing Louis XVI. In Germany, the Schmidt and Deibler families created similar empires. These weren't just families. They were cartels. By marrying their daughters to other executioners' sons, and their sons to other executioners' daughters, they created a closed loop of biological and professional continuity. When a suitor finally arrives, it's an event. A young man rides into your yard. He looks dusty from the road, his horse tired. He doesn't flinch at the smell of the rendering vats in your yard. He doesn't cross himself when he sees you. He dismounts and shakes your hand, skin to skin, no gloves, no tongs. That simple handshake is electric. It's the first time in months an outsider has touched you without revulsion. He is one of us. He speaks the language. He knows the weight of the sword. He knows the silence of the breakfast table. You bring him inside, and for the first time, your house feels like a normal home. There's no need to apologize for your life. You don't have to hide the tools or change the subject when he asks, "So how was work?" You can actually talk shop. "Oh, busy week. Had a branding on Tuesday. Difficult client. Squirmed a lot." And he nods sympathetically. Yes, the squirmers are the worst. Have you tried the new restraints from Nuremberg? It's a macabre conversation to any eavesdropper, but to you, it's just two professionals talking shop over a beer. Your daughter enters the room. She looks at this stranger. She knows what he is. She knows that marrying him means she will never leave this life. She will simply trade her father's isolated house for a husband's isolated house in a different town. She will trade being the executioner's daughter for being the executioner's wife. It's a tragic realization, a sealing of fate, but there is also relief. She sees in his eyes that he doesn't fear her. He doesn't look at her like she's a witch. He looks at her like a woman. In a world that treats her like a monster, finding someone who treats her like a human is a profound romantic victory. The wedding itself is a surreal affair. It's a pariah party. Since you can't invite the neighbors, and the local priest might be reluctant to perform the ceremony, often doing it quickly in the sacristy or at the house, the guest list is exclusively the unwanted. It's a gathering of the fringe. Other executioners travel from miles around. The knackers, the gravediggers, maybe the bailiffs come. The party is raucous. There is a sense of release that you don't find at polite weddings. When the whole world hates you, you stop caring about decorum. The wine flows, the music plays, perhaps played by a musician who is also an outcast. You dance, you laugh. For one night, the wall of silence is broken by the noise of your own making. You look at the newlyweds. They are dancing, they look happy. It's a fierce, defiant happiness. Historians often debate the emotional reality of these dynasties. Was it a curse or a comfort? On one hand, the lack of choice is oppressive. Your daughter couldn't dream of being a poet or a merchant. She was trapped. On the other hand, these families were incredibly tight-knit. The divorce rate was non-existent, mostly because where would you go? The shared trauma bonded couples in a way that normal couples couldn't understand. They were soldiers in the same trench. There is a theory that executioner families were actually some of the most stable and loving domestic units in the Middle Ages because the external pressure forced them to be solid on the inside. There is also a fascinating fringe benefit to these marriages: the transfer of trade secrets. When your daughter marries the executioner of a neighboring region, she takes your recipes with her. Maybe you have a secret herbal blend for treating torture victims, or a specific technique for sharpening the blade. These intellectual properties were passed down through the women. The wives were the keepers of the shadow knowledge, the glue that held the professional network together. As the wedding winds down and the guests stumble off to sleep in your barn or guest rooms, you sit back at your table. The house is quiet again, but it feels different. You have secured the succession. You have found a place for your daughter where she will be safe, fed, and understood. You have expanded the network. You think about the grandchildren that will come. They will be born into this too. The cycle will continue. The little boys will play with toy swords. The little girls will learn to mix salves. It's a heavy legacy to hand down, like a genetic defect you can't edit out. But as you finish the last of the wedding wine, you try to see the silver lining. In a world of chaos, war, and plague, your family has a permanent job. As long as there is law, there will be a need for someone to enforce it. You aren't just raising killers, you are raising survivors. And in the Middle Ages, survival is the only success story that counts. The house is finally quiet. The wedding guests have gone. Your daughter has moved to her new life in another town, and the fire in the hearth has burned down to a pile of gray ash that looks uncomfortably like the remains of a pyre. You are sitting in your chair, staring into the dark. The adrenaline of the execution, the busyness of the market, the noise of the crowd, it's all gone. And this is when the real job begins. The day shift is physical labor. The night shift is psychological warfare. You are wide awake. In the modern world, we have a name for what you're feeling. We call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or moral injury. We have therapists, support groups, and medication. We have entire industries dedicated to helping people process trauma. In the 15th century, you have ale, and you have the church, or rather, you would have the church if they let you in. You pour yourself a cup of strong wine. Your hand shakes slightly, just a tremor. It's not from the weight of the sword, it's from the weight of the memory. You close your eyes, and you see them, not the pumpkins you practiced on. You see the eyes of the man you beheaded last week. You see the woman who screamed when you branded her. These aren't horror movie monsters. They are high-definition memories that play on a loop in the theater of your mind. In the medieval worldview, the cure for this kind of internal haunting is simple: confession. The sacrament of penance is the ultimate spiritual reset button. You go to a priest, you list your sins. I got angry. I stole a spoon. I looked at the neighbor's cow with envy. The priest mumbles some Latin, assigns you 10 Hail Marys, and poof, your soul is scrubbed clean. It's a brilliant system for mental hygiene. It allows people to offload their guilt and sleep soundly. But for you, the system is broken. You decide to try anyway. You wrap your cloak tight around you and walk through the sleeping town to the priest's rectory. You knock on the heavy wooden door. It cracks open, revealing the priest's face, illuminated by a flickering candle. He sees who it is. He doesn't open the door wider. He keeps the chain on. "Father," you say, your voice rough, "I need to confess." The priest looks uncomfortable. He shifts his weight. Technically, he cannot refuse a dying man. But you aren't dying. You are very much alive, and you are dripping with the invisible miasma of death. There is a concept in canon law called irregularity, irregularitas. It states that clergy cannot shed blood. If a priest sheds blood, he can no longer perform the sacraments. By extension, many priests believed that even associating too closely with a shedder of blood, that's you, compromised their own spiritual purity. You are a walking biohazard to his career. Pray at home, my son, he says through the crack. God hears all. But I need absolution, you insist. You need the ritual. You need the human connection of someone saying you are forgiven. You are doing the king's justice, the priest says, reciting the standard line. The king is God's anointed, therefore your work is not sin. Go in peace. He closes the door. The bolt slides home. You are left standing on the cobblestones. This is the theological gaslighting of your profession. The church tells you that your job is necessary and righteous, that you are the sword of God, so technically you haven't sinned, but if you haven't sinned, why does everyone treat you like a sinner? If your work is holy, why won't the holy man let you in? You are trapped in a logic loop. You are too just to be forgiven, but too dirty to be embraced. So you walk back home, the guilt sitting heavy in your gut like a stone. This lack of spiritual release is a devastating psychological toll. You are the sin eater of the community. You take on the moral burden of killing so that the judge, the jury, and the crowd can remain innocent. They get to say justice was done while you have to wash the blood off your hands. You absorb the collective violence of the society, but you have no way to purge it. Historians and psychologists have long debated the mental state of executioners. Did they become sociopaths, numb to the violence, or were they deeply traumatized men crumbling under the pressure? There is evidence for the latter. We find records of executioners who drank heavily. Alcoholism was an occupational hazard. We find records of those who became melancholic, a medieval catch-all term for depression. Some simply quit, running away in the middle of the night, abandoning the lucrative monopoly to disappear into anonymity. There is a fascinating, almost fringe theory that executioners developed their own private, heterodox spirituality. Cut off from the official church, they created a shadow Christianity. Some kept personal chapels in their homes, filled with relics of the good death, pieces of rope, splinters of wood, treating these grisly objects as holy talismans. There are rumors of executioners who would confess to their swords. It sounds animistic, almost pagan. You might sit in your armory, holding the blade, and whisper your regrets to the steel. The sword doesn't judge. The sword understands. It's a lonely, desperate form of therapy. The irony is blinding. Think about the prisoner you executed yesterday. Before he died, he was granted a priest. He got to confess. He received the last rites. He died with a clean soul, guaranteed entry to purgatory or heaven. You, the man who sent him there, are denied that comfort. The victim gets better customer service from the church than the employee. You are the travel agent for the afterlife, booking tickets for everyone else, while you are banned from boarding the plane. You sit back down in your chair, the wine sour in your mouth. You look at the crucifix hanging on your wall. It's a simple wooden cross. You wonder if God judges you by the laws of the church or by the laws of the land. It's a heavy philosophical question for 3:00 a.m. This isolation breeds a unique kind of stoicism. You learn to compartmentalize. You build a wall inside your mind, brick by brick. On one side is the executioner, the professional who knows anatomy and knots. On the other side is the man, the father who loves his kids and likes gardening. You try to keep the door between those rooms locked. But at night, the door creaks open. The memories seep through. You think about the pardon you ask of the condemned. Forgive me, brother, for I must do my duty. It's a ritualized apology. Does it count? Does it absolve you? Or is it just words spoken to the wind? You cling to it anyway. You collect those small moments of forgiveness like rare coins. If the prisoner nodded at you, if they said, "I forgive you," you hold on to that memory with a death grip. It's the only absolution you're going to get. You realize that your trauma is the price of your social contract. You are wealthy, you are feared, you are essential, but the cost is your peace of mind. You are a vessel for the town's ugly truths. They look at you and see death, so they don't have to look at it in themselves. The candle on your table flickers and dies, plunging the room into total darkness. You don't move to light another one. The dark feels safer. In the dark, nobody can see you. In the dark, you are just a man, not a monster. You finish the wine. You will sit here until dawn, keeping your vigil, waiting for the sun to rise and bring with it the noise and the light that forces you to put the mask back on. But for now, in the silence, you face your ghosts alone, without a priest, without a prayer, just you and the echo of the falling blade. The years grind on, much like the stone you used to sharpen your blade. Your hair turns the color of the iron you've wielded for decades, a dull, steely gray. Your shoulders, once broad enough to terrify a mob, begin to stoop under the invisible weight of 1,000 judgments. In the modern world, retirement is a golden age of golf courses and grandchildren. For you, retirement is a nebulous concept. You don't get a gold watch and a farewell party with cake. You simply fade. The end of an executioner's career usually comes down to simple biology, the loss of strength. The day comes when you lift the Richtschwert and feel a tremor in your wrist. You look at the pumpkin in the yard, and you know. You can no longer guarantee the clean cut. In a profession where competence is the only thing keeping you from being lynched, a loss of skill is a death sentence for your career. You hang up the sword, you pass it to your son. He is ready. He has the hunger and the steady hands you once had. You watch him take the lead, stepping into your boots, literally and metaphorically. You become the ghost in the corner of the kitchen, the old man who smells of history and regret. And then the final warrant arrives, not from a judge, but from nature. Dying as an executioner is a quiet affair. There are no town criers announcing your declining health. There are no prayer circles in the main square. You lie in your bed, that comfortable, expensive goose-down bed paid for with blood money, and you listen to the sounds of the house. You hear your son sharpening the blade downstairs. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It's a comforting rhythm, the heartbeat of your dynasty. You are leaving the world, but the work remains. When the moment comes, it is unceremonious. You slip away in the dark, perhaps holding the hand of your wife, the only person who truly knew the man behind the mask. But death, which you dispensed so liberally to others, now claims you with the same indifferent efficiency. You are gone. The necessary evil has ceased to function. Now comes the final indignity, the burial. In the medieval mindset, where you are buried is a GPS coordinate for your soul's destination. To be buried in consecrated ground, the churchyard, is essential. The soil itself has been blessed, creating a spiritual safe zone that protects you from demons until Judgment Day. But you are a problem. The local priest, the same one who spoke to you through the chained door, now scratches his head. You were a baptized Christian. You served the king, but you are him. You are the defiler. To bury you next to the respectable baker or the pious nun would be a scandal. It might pollute the holy ground. So where do you go? In many regions, there was a grim compromise. You might be buried in a specific, segregated corner of the cemetery, often the north side, which was traditionally associated with the dark and the cold. It's the bad neighborhood of the graveyard, reserved for suicides, unbaptized infants, and you. In some stricter towns, you aren't allowed in the gate at all. You are buried just outside the church wall, close enough to hear the prayers, but separated by a barrier of stone, just as you were in life. There is a mainstream historical fact that is particularly poignant. Some executioners were buried right there in their own gardens, or even under the gallows themselves. Imagine that. Spending eternity beneath the very structure where you worked. It's a closed loop. You are planted in the soil you fertilized with your own grim trade. It's a level of commitment to the job that goes beyond the grave. There is a quirky, macabre tradition, or perhaps a superstition, that in some cases, executioners were buried face down. The logic isn't entirely clear. Was it to prevent your restless spirit from finding its way back up? Or was it a final mark of shame, turning your back on God even in death? Or perhaps it was simpler, to stop you from looking at the living. Other fringe accounts suggest that executioners were buried with their tools. Not out of honor, like a Viking warrior with his sword, but as a warning. Here lies the cutter, beware. Historians debate the emotional impact of this final exclusion. Did executioner families resent this, or did they create their own sacred spaces? There is evidence that executioner dynasties created their own private family crypts, lavishly decorated on their own land. If the church wouldn't bless their bones, they would bless them themselves with the sanctity of family and wealth. We don't need your holy ground, they seem to say. We have our own ground. It's a final act of defiance. Still, the funeral itself is small. The pariah network activates one last time. The executioners from neighboring towns ride in dressed in black. The knackers, the gravediggers. It's a gathering of the Dark Guild. They stand around your grave, silent and respectful. They lower you into the cold earth that feels no different from the consecrated kind, despite what the priest says. They shovel the dirt on top of you, dust to dust, ash to ash, blood to mud. There will be no statue of you in the town square. There will be no plaque on your house saying the great master lived here. The town wants to forget you as quickly as possible. You are a shameful secret they kept for 40 years. Your name will vanish from the lips of the locals, replaced instantly by your son's name. The executioner is dead. Long live the executioner. The title is immortal. The man is disposable. As the years pass, the grass grows over your unmarked grave. The wooden cross, if there was one, rots away. You become part of the geology of the outcast lands. The flowers in the garden bloom, fed by the nutrients of your decay, perhaps growing a little brighter, a little taller. The ravens still croak on the roof. The smell of the rendering vats still hangs in the air. The cycle continues without a hiccup. Ultimately, your legacy is not in stone, but in the silence. You are the shadow that allowed the city to define its light. You were the boundary maker. By standing on the wrong side of the line, you showed everyone else where the line was. You absorbed their sins, their filth, their cruelty, and you took it all with you into the dark earth. You were the scapegoat who didn't get to run into the wilderness. You had to live in it. And now, finally, you are at rest. No more warrants, no more screaming crowds, no more trembling prisoners. The three-strike rule doesn't apply down here. The tongs can't reach you. The isolation is complete, but for the first time, it is peaceful. You have completed your contract. You have washed the world clean one last time by leaving it. The fire in the hearth has finally burned out. The last ember has winked its dull red eye and gone to sleep, leaving only a trail of gray smoke drifting up the chimney. The story of the executioner, with all its noise and iron and sorrow, fades with it. The heavy oak door of that isolated house is closed, locked against the night, and the figures we watched, the man, the son, the daughter, have retreated into the shadows of history where they belong. They are at rest now, and you are here, safe in a different time, a different world. You are not on a scaffold, you are in your bed. The sheets are soft, not rough like wool. The air is clean, smelling of fresh laundry, not the smoke of industry. The only silence around you is the peaceful quiet of your own room, a sanctuary you chose, not one you were forced into. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the tension draining out of them, sinking into the mattress. That vigilance, that need to watch the crowd, to check the lock, to worry about the judgment of others. Let it all dissolve. You don't have to carry any of that weight. You are just an observer who has walked a long road and has now returned home. The night outside is gentle. The darkness isn't a place of exile. It's a warm blanket wrapped around the world to help it sleep. Listen to the rhythm of your own breathing. Slow, steady, deep. The past is a story that has already been written, but your sleep is a blank page waiting for dreams. Drift away from the muddy boots and the sharp blades. Drift towards the quiet, the soft, and the calm. The work is done. The tools are put away. The world is turning slowly in the dark, and you are perfectly safe to let go.